Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the massive energy revolution that's completely transforming France's building sector. Seriously, the rules are changing, the deadlines are coming up fast, and whether you're a homeowner, an investor, or a builder, you absolutely need to know about the critical updates hitting in 2026. So let's get into it.
All right, let's kick things off with a number that tends to grab everyone's attention: 45,000 euros. That is the potential fine for not complying with these new environmental regulations. And, that's not even getting into the potential prison time for repeat offenders. So yeah, the stakes are officially very, very high. So, to really get our heads around what's going on, here's our game plan. We'll start with how this transition is speeding up. Then we'll look at how the regulations are getting tighter for existing buildings. We'll dig into what's called the carbon shock for new builds, figure out how you can actually finance all this, and then wrap up with your key strategic next steps.
Now, you gotta remember, this push in France isn't happening in a bubble. It is plugged right into a huge global movement. The International Energy Agency, they're projecting that global energy investment is going to hit an incredible $3.3 trillion by 2025. A massive chunk of that is flowing straight into clean energy and making our buildings more efficient. The whole world is moving this way, and France is right at the front of the pack.
Okay, so how does that big global trend actually translate into law here in France? Well, for existing buildings, the rules are getting stricter, and they are getting stricter fast. It's a step-by-step approach that lays out a really clear timeline of pressure, pushing property owners to get renovating.
Let's just walk through this audit countdown because it tells the whole story. It kicked off in April 2023. Back then, if you wanted to sell one of the worst-performing homes, we're talking ratings of F or G, you had to get a mandatory energy audit. But watch what happens next. By January 2025, that net gets wider, pulling in properties rated E. And it doesn't stop there. Class D properties are on the clock for 2034. The message from the government couldn't be clearer. The age of energy-guzzling buildings is coming to an end.
Okay, so that's existing buildings. But what about new construction? This is where the RE 2020 regulation comes in, and believe me, it is a seismic shift. It's a totally new way of thinking. We're moving way beyond just how much energy a building uses to calculating its entire carbon footprint over its entire life.
And at the heart of RE 2020 is this concept, the life cycle analysis, or ACV. The best way to think about it is as a carbon audit that runs from cradle to grave. It forces developers to account for carbon emissions at every single stage, not just when someone flips on a light switch. And this slide right here shows you exactly what that means. We're talking about the emissions from pulling raw materials out of the ground, the carbon costs to manufacture the parts, the construction process itself, all the energy used over a 50-year lifespan, all the way to demolition and recycling. Everything, and I mean everything, now has a carbon price tag attached to it.
So here's the critical part. The total carbon budget you're allowed for construction, that's the I-construction indicator you see here, is being systematically squeezed. If you look at the chart, you can see how those limits are dropping in 2025, then again in 2028, and again in 2031. This is a forcing function. It's pushing the entire industry to get creative and switch to lower carbon materials and building methods. Now, this is where the rubber really meets the road. This slide is a fantastic real-world example of how this all plays out. Take a look at the 2022 column on the left. A standard gas boiler, totally fine for new apartment buildings. But now look at 2025. For any project getting a permit from then on, that same system is crossed out. It's no longer compliant. The regulation is literally steering the market away from gas and towards things like heat pumps and biomass.
Okay, so all of these new rules create a ton of pressure. I get it. But, and this is a big but, it's really important to know that they're paired with some serious financial help and incentives. These are designed to help everyone, from property owners to developers, actually adapt to this new reality.
The big one, the flagship program, is MaPrimeRénov', especially the version for co-op properties. But it doesn't work in isolation. You can actually stack it with a whole ecosystem of support, like the Energy Savings Certificates, or CEEs, grants from your local authorities, and of course, the zero-interest eco-loan, the EGO-PTZ.
Let's see how this works in the real world for a condo building. Look at this table. A high-performance renovation can get a base subsidy covering 45% of the total cost. But then you get these powerful bonuses. If the building is considered fragile, that's an extra 20% on top. If the project gets the building out of that terrible F or G energy rating, bam, another 10%. When you stack these up, even really big, ambitious projects can become financially doable.
So you're facing this huge regulatory push on one side and this clear financial pathway on the other. The big question is, what are the key things that owners and developers need to be doing, like right now?
It really boils down to 4 logical steps. First, audit. Get a full energy audit done. You can't fix what you don't measure. Second, plan. Use that audit to build a smart, multi-year plan for the work. Third, finance. Put together your full funding package. And finally, execute. You've got to bring in the certified pros to do the work. That means RGE certified contractors and an AMO, which is basically a project management assistant to guide you through the whole complex process.
I really think this quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the 2 sides of this coin. Is it a constraint? Yes, absolutely. It's forcing everyone to change. But it's also the biggest catalyst we have for creating buildings that are more valuable, more comfortable, and just fundamentally more sustainable. It's a challenge for sure, but man, what an opportunity.
So, the final takeaway here is pretty simple. The path to a low-carbon building stock by 2050 is locked in, and things are only moving faster. The question for every single professional, investor, and property owner is no longer if you'll have to adapt, but when. So, are you going to lead this transition, or are you going to be forced to play a frantic game of catch-up?